We thought buying the city's most exclusive penthouse was our ultimate power move. Instead, we inherited a war, a corporate conspiracy, and a gaping hole where our master bedroom used to be. The air in the marble lobby of the Onyx Heights was thick with the smell of expensive polish and unspoken arrogance. I clutched my wife Lena's hand, feeling the familiar anxious thrum beneath my tailored suit. We were here for a private showing, the penthouse suite, apparently the most exclusive unit in the entire building, and definitely the most expensive. We'd done well. Beyond well, actually. But in certain circles, in certain buildings, that still didn't translate to automatic respect. We were 10 minutes early, which I always preferred. Get in, see the space, sign the papers, and be gone before the real estate circus started. Our car service was idling discreetly down the street, a black monolith waiting for its occupants. Then Mr. Sterling walked in. Arthur Sterling. The name alone sounded like the kind of old money that owned the very foundations this building was built on. He was all sharp angles and expensive tweed, carrying a thin leather briefcase as if it contained the secrets to the universe. He stopped dead when he saw us standing near the concierge desk, his impeccably sculpted eyebrow arching high enough to disappear into his hairline. "Good afternoon," I offered, extending my hand with a warm, professional smile. "My wife Lena and I are here for the showing of Penthouse 24A. We scheduled it for 3. Sterling didn't take my hand. He didn't even look at it. His gaze swept over my dark skin. Ainin then lingered dismissively on Lena's elegant designer dress before snapping back to my face with a look of profound inconvenience. "Ah, yes, the 3 o'clock appointment," he drawled, his voice possessing that slow, patronizing cadence reserved for people who think they're superior. He checked his heavy gold watch, not bothering to look at the schedule clipboard he held. "You must be the interested parties. I was under the impression you might be earlier." "We're right on time, Mr. Sterling," Lena interjected smoothly, her tone cool steel wrapped in silk. She rarely raised her voice, but her presence could stop traffic. "Perhaps you were expecting someone else?" Sterling actually scoffed. It was a small private sound, but in the echoing marble hall it felt like a slap. No, just the viewing process usually involves a brief preparatory conversation. Qualifications, financials, preliminary vetting, standard procedure for a property of this caliber. He tapped the clipboard pointedly. "We like to ensure our clientele fully appreciates the unique demographic of this particular residence." I felt my jaw tighten. Lena squeezed my hand, a silent warning. We'd practiced this dance for years, but sometimes the sheer audacity of it still stung. We were partners in a tech firm that had IPO'd 18 months ago. Our net worth could buy this entire block. But to Mr. Sterling, we were just 2 people of color who had clearly wandered into the wrong zip code. "Mr. Sterling," I said, forcing the smile back into place, though it felt brittle around the edges. "We've done the preliminary vetting online. Our pre-approval letter from Northwood Private Bank should be in your inbox. It's a clean, no contingency offer, ready to go above asking price for the right unit." He sighed, a long-suffering exhalation, as if discussing bank statements with us was taxing his very soul. He flipped through the clipboard pages with exaggerated slowness. Yes, bank letters, anyone can print those these days. "Look, gentlemen and madam, let's be frank. Penthouse 24A is not a starter condo. It requires a certain established pedigree. The board is very sensitive about maintaining the building's atmosphere." "And what, exactly, is the building's atmosphere, Mr. Sterling?" Lena asked, her eyes narrowing just slightly. He gestured vaguely around the pristine, silent lobby. "Exclusivity, heritage. We have dignitaries, old money, people who have been in the city for generations, not people who just appeared." He finally looked up, a predatory smirk playing on his lips. "The unit is listed at $14 million. We're expecting offers closer to $16 million, sight unseen, with substantial down payments placed in escrow by tomorrow morning if we proceed at all." I took a deep breath. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the blatant, entitled disrespect. I looked at Lena, and she gave the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. Time to stop playing their game and start changing the rules. "Mr. Sterling?" I said, my voice losing the manufactured warmth and taking on the deep, resonant tone I usually reserve for hostile takeover meetings. "Thank you for clarifying the necessary procedures. We appreciate the transparency regarding the atmosphere you are curating here." I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket and pulled out a thin, matte black envelope, not a bank letter but something far heavier. I slid it across the polished mahogany desk toward him. He eyed it suspiciously, as if it might contain biological waste. "What is this?" "That," I said, leaning in slightly, "is our earnest money deposit for the entirety of the Onyx Heights." Sterling blinked. He picked up the envelope as if it were radioactive. "I beg your pardon. Are you confusing this property with a smaller development? We have 42 units here, plus commercial space on the ground floor. The total value portfolio for this complex is conservatively estimated at $280 million. "We are aware of the valuation, Mr. Sterling," Lena corrected him gently. "And we are aware that the majority owner, Mr. Alastair Thorne, has been looking to liquidate his holdings quietly for the last 6 months. We didn't come here for 24A. We came here because we wanted to meet the man representing the property we already purchased." Sterling's face, previously set in smug superiority, began to flicker. He tore open the black envelope, pulling out a single official-looking document, a notice of transfer, notarized and fully executed. His eyes scanned the bold font detailing the acquisition of the controlling shares from Thorne Holdings. His breath hitched. The gold watch seemed to suddenly weigh heavily on his wrist. This can't be right," he whispered, his voice cracking. He started flipping through the documents wildly, looking for a flaw, a loophole, anything to invalidate the cold, ink-hard proof in his hands. "Thorne? Thorne said he wasn't selling to a corporation. He wanted a private individual. He wanted a buyer who could move quickly and discreetly," I corrected him, picking up the penthouse keys that had been lying innocently on the desk. "And, Mr. Sterling, you seem to have missed the memo regarding the building's new management structure. As of 10 a.m. this morning, the property management contract is under review." He looked up at me, the color draining from his face so rapidly it looked like an old photograph fading in the sun. His tweed jacket suddenly seemed too large, his authority evaporating like steam. The veneer of old-world dignity shattered, revealing sheer, naked panic underneath. He looked from the documents to me, then to Lena, and back again, his mouth hanging slightly open. "You," he stammered, his eyes wide and darting toward the exit. "You own this building?" "We do now," Lena confirmed, taking my arm and pulling me toward the elevator bank. "And Mr. Sterling," I added, pausing just before stepping into the gleaming brass cage, "since you are clearly still on the premises, perhaps you can escort us up to the penthouse. We need to decide how to reorganize your department, starting with who handles the actual client viewings around here. Do you have the keys for the owner's private entrance, or should I call security to escort you out?" The elevator doors slid shut with a soft, expensive thud, sealing us into a world that was suddenly, jarringly, ours. For a few moments neither Lena nor I spoke. The silence in the polished brass box was heavy, broken only by the smooth, silent ascent past floor markers that now felt profoundly irrelevant. We were heading to the top, but the real ascent had happened in that lobby. Lena finally broke the silence, a low, triumphant chuckle escaping her. "Did you see his face, Michael? Priceless. I haven't seen that much existential dread since our Series C funding round." I leaned my head back against the cool metal wall, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for the last decade. "I wanted to buy the penthouse, Lena, just to send him a message. You went for the whole damn kingdom. Why buy a single throne when you can own the entire castle?" she countered, her eyes sparkling with satisfied ambition. "He insulted us. Not just you, not just me, but us. Oh, that kind of arrogance deserves a lesson written in infrastructure, not just sharp words." The elevator chimed softly, indicating we had reached the penthouse level. The doors opened onto a private foyer, a space Sterling had clearly been preparing for the right buyer. It was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows displaying a panoramic view of the city lights already beginning to glitter as dusk settled. "Well," I said, stepping out, feeling the plush carpet under my Italian leather shoes. Let's survey the grounds of our new investment. We walked through the vast living area. The design was modern minimalist, all glass, steel, and imported Italian marble. It was beautiful, cold, and utterly impersonal. It screamed trophy asset, not home. It needs warmth, Lena murmured, running a hand over a stark white countertop, and a serious redecoration budget. I walked over to the wall of windows, looking out over the metropolis we now partially controlled. The view is unbeatable, though. Imagine the quarterly shareholder meetings up here. We spent the next hour in quiet exploration. The master suite, the gym, the private library. Every room confirmed the building's status as a fortress of the elite. We were already discussing contractors and interior designers when my phone buzzed. It was our lawyer, David, calling from the firm's after-hours line. "Michael, congratulations. The Thorn transfer is absolutely ironclad. Sterling is already calling the building management's emergency line, demanding to speak to the building owner. He's threatening to resign and sue for defamation of character." I smiled faintly. "Let him. David, what about the other leases? The commercial spaces on the ground floor?" "Ah, that's where it gets interesting," David said, his voice dropping conspiratorially. Thorn held the master lease for the entire ground floor retail space, 4 massive storefronts. He rented them out long-term. The tenants include a high-end art gallery, a boutique jewelry shop, a financial consulting firm, and a small, rather dilapidated independent coffee shop called The Daily Grind. "The coffee shop?" Lena frowned, appearing beside me. "Yes. Apparently it's been there for 20 years. Beloved by the local community, but making barely enough to cover rent. Thorn kept them on because of a personal connection, ignoring their financial viability. Their lease expires in 3 months. Terminate it now," I instructed without hesitation. "Michael, wait," Lena cautioned. "That coffee shop might be the only real soul this building has left. Soul doesn't pay $280 million mortgages, honey. We need reliable tenants. We'll buy them out, give them a nice severance package, and put in a proper, high-end chain. Something that matches the atmosphere Mr. Sterling admires so much." David sighed. "Understood. I'll serve the notice tomorrow morning. Now, before I let you enjoy your new penthouse, there's one more thing Thorn insisted we mention. It was in an addendum." "What is it?" I asked, suddenly uneasy. Thorn had been very clean in the paperwork. The only loose thread was the small, handwritten note attached to the final transfer agreement. The lease for penthouse 24B. It's owned, not rented. An old gentleman named Mr. Elias Vance. He has a lifetime lease signed back in the early 70s, predating the current ownership structure entirely. Thorn said Vance is immovable, deeply entrenched, and basically untouchable under this contract. He pays a nominal fee, something like $400 a month, and he has squatter's rights for life. Thorn apologized profusely. It was the one thing he couldn't include in the sale. My blood ran cold. A lifetime lease, unmovable, a thorn in the side of our brand-new, pristine asset. "How long has Vance lived there?" Lena asked sharply. "Since 1973. He's ancient. He's probably just waiting to die and free up the space naturally." I walked over to the property schematics we'd downloaded onto the tablet. Penthouse 24A was our prize jewel, and Penthouse 24B, Vance's domain, was directly adjacent, separated from ours only by a single load-bearing wall and what looked like a service closet. "Get me the full file on Elias Vance, David. Every piece of correspondence, every complaint, every maintenance request filed in the last 50 years. Tomorrow morning, first thing, I want to know everything about our new upstairs neighbor." I hung up the phone, tossing it onto the leather sofa. Lena was already on the terrace, looking down at the glittering tapestry of the city below. "Imagine," she said, her voice carrying back into the echoing room, "owning this entire skyline. Sterling is probably having a coronary downstairs." I joined her, looking over the edge. The air was crisp up here. But the thought of that old man, that immovable fixture, paying $400 a month for a piece of real estate worth $20 million, grated on my sense of order. It was an anomaly, and anomalies in my world had to be corrected. "We'll handle Vance, Lena. He'll either sell or he'll find out what happens when you inconvenience the new owners of the entire building. Just as I finished the sentence, a sound echoed faintly from the apartment next door. 24B. It wasn't the quiet hum of air conditioning or the distant city noise. It was rhythmic, heavy, and strangely mechanical. Clang, hiss, clang, hiss. It sounded like something industrial, something large being moved or operated directly against the shared wall, and it was definitely not the sound of an elderly man quietly passing the time. Lena leaned over the railing, straining to hear. "What is that noise? It sounds like construction, or maybe some kind of heavy machinery." I pressed my ear against the cool glass of the window separating our space from 24B. The rhythmic noise intensified, accompanied now by a faint, sharp smell. Not polish, not dust, but something metallic and acrid like ozone. Clang hiss, it was insistent, aggressive. "That's not maintenance, Lena," I said, my earlier satisfaction instantly curdling into professional alarm. "That sounds like someone trying to cut through steel. And if they are doing it on the structural wall separating 24A and 24B, they are currently compromising the integrity of the most expensive apartment in the complex. Our apartment." I spun around, grabbing the heavy antique brass letter opener from the desk. "Stay here. I'm going to investigate Mr. Vance's lifetime lease immediately." I marched back into the foyer, found the main door, and keyed in the emergency access code David had provided for maintenance emergencies. As I pulled the heavy door open, the noise from next door hit me with full, deafening force, a screeching roar that drowned out all thought. I stepped out onto the shared landing, my eyes adjusting to the dim light outside 24B. The door to Vance's unit wasn't just ajar. It was buckled inward, hanging precariously off one hinge. Smoke, thick and stinging, billowed out into the hall, smelling sharply of burnt wiring and something else, something chemical. I raised the letter opener defensively and cautiously stepped through the ruined doorway, shouting, "Police! Building security! Stop what you're doing!" The interior of 24B was not a residence. It was a chaotic, as dimly lit cavern of humming servers, tangled cables, and blinking lights stretching back into the darkness. In the center of this makeshift data fortress, bathed in the green glow of monitors, was a figure hunched over a massive, humming console. It wasn't an old man. It was a young woman, maybe 20, wearing welding goggles pushed up onto her forehead, her fingers flying across a keyboard with impossible speed. She didn't jump or scream when I entered. She just looked up, her eyes unnervingly calm, fixed on me. And then she smiled, a wide, unsettling grin that barely touched her eyes. Behind her, the sound of the cutting machinery rose to a crescendo, and I realized with a sickening jolt that the noise wasn't coming from her equipment. It was coming from the wall behind her workstation, the wall that separated her server farm from our master bedroom. And whatever she was cutting through, it was getting very close. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Mr. CEO," she said, her voice distorted by the din. "I assume you're here about the power surge. Don't worry, I'm almost done routing the primary fiber line." "What are you routing?" I demanded, stepping further into the room, my eyes scanning the humming banks of illegal hardware. "This is private property. You're running an illegal operation." She tapped one last key. The cutting sound stopped instantly. The room plunged into near darkness, save for the monitors. "No," she corrected me sweetly. "I'm running the new backbone, and I'm not running from anyone, Mr. Michael Vance. I'm running for him." Before I could process the shared last name, the monitors surrounding her flashed one unified, terrifying message in bright red text. "Self-destruct sequence initiated. Total system overload in T-minus 60 seconds. 60 seconds. The digital countdown glared in furious red, the numbers ticking down with agonizing speed. The chemical smell in the air intensified, sharp and biting, overriding the earlier scent of ozone. "Self-destruct?" I roared, abandoning all pretense of negotiation. I lunged toward the workstation, the letter opener useless in my hand against banks of flashing electronics. "What in God's name are you doing to my building?" The young woman, who claimed to be Vance, didn't flinch. She merely tilted her head, her expression a blend of defiance and intense focus. "Your building? Cute. Look closer. Michael. You bought the shell. I control the network. I reached the console, intending to smash the main drive, but she moved with impossible speed, slamming a thick steel plate down over the keyboard with a resounding clang. She stepped back, putting a solid server rack between us. Don't touch anything. This entire matrix is tied into the building's core infrastructure: HVAC, security grids, water pressure regulators. If you trigger a hard shutdown, the whole place goes dark, and the EMP pulse fries every non-shielded device in a 5-block radius. You're threatening a blackout over a $20 million penthouse you're squatting in? I was incredulous, but the sheer complexity of the setup, the industrial-grade cooling units running overtime, the sheer density of the hardware, told me this wasn't a hobbyist. This was professional, massive-scale, illicit operation. I'm threatening to expose what your acquisition team missed, she retorted, her voice now laced with cold fury. Elias Vance didn't just get a lifetime lease for being a nice old man, Michael. He was the original systems architect for this building. He designed the security backdoors, the hidden access points, and the master override controls before Thorne even broke ground on the south tower. Behind her, the red timer blinked. To minus 45 seconds. I glanced wildly around the room. The wall we'd worried about, the one adjoining our master bedroom, was now visibly compromised. A jagged hole about 2 feet wide had been expertly cut through the steel and concrete, revealing dark, wet insulation and thick shielded conduits running through the structure. This wasn't about a simple network connection. She was actively boring into the building's spine. "Lena!" I yelled back towards the doorway, praying she hadn't followed me in. "Get out, now!" "I'm right here." Lena's voice cut through the noise, remarkably calm despite the smoke. She stood framed in the ruined doorway, holding up her phone, which was recording. "I'm documenting your little data center, Miss Vance. When the police arrive, they will be very interested in why you chose our new property for your data hub." The young Vance laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Police? You think Thorne didn't cover his tracks? He was paying me handsomely. Your lifetime lease was my contract renewal. I'm not squatting. I'm running a highly sophisticated data laundering and extraction service. And you two just inherited the entire payroll." To minus 30 seconds. "What are you extracting?" I demanded, trying to keep my focus on her, trying to find a physical weakness to exploit. "Information. Proprietary secrets. The kind that people like Alistair Thorne are happy to pay astronomical sums to make disappear from the digital record. You bought the building, Michael, but you also bought the operation." She pointed toward the compromised wall with an accusatory finger. "See those conduits? Those aren't just for your apartment's wiring. They connect directly to the secure fiber hub Thorne used to manage his entire offshore portfolio." I was moments away from initiating the final wipe and uploading everything to the public domain. "Your interruption has forced my hand into the emergency protocol." "Emergency protocol?" Lena asked, her voice losing its edge of control for the first time. "What does that involve?" "Total data destruction and remote physical sabotage," she said, her gaze flicking back to the timer. T-minus 15 seconds. "I have to ensure that sensitive data never sees the light of day, or my clients find me. And believe me, my clients are far less forgiving than a grumpy real estate agent." I realized the true danger now. It wasn't just about the network. It was about the physical safety of the structure itself and the massive liability we just acquired. If she initiated this EMP, not only would we lose valuable data centers, we'd lose the entire top floor to electrical failure. "Stop the countdown," I commanded, moving around the server rack, trying to flank her. She met my charge, not with a weapon, but with a small, square remote control that looked like a garage door opener. She pressed a button marked with a skull icon. To minus 5 seconds. "Too late," she whispered, her eyes wide with manic triumph. "But thanks for bringing me a distraction. You're going to need a better firewall, Michael." The red numbers vanished, replaced by one final word. "Execute." Instead of the expected blinding flash of an EMP, the room went utterly silent. The humming died. The lights flickered once, plunging us into total blackness, save for the emergency exit signs. "What happened?" Lena gasped. "Is it over?" A second later, a new noise started. incredibly loud, coming from directly above us. It was a slow, grinding mechanical groan, like tons of stressed metal shifting under impossible pressure. Then came a terrifying, high-pitched screech of tortured steel. The structural integrity test failed. The young woman's voice echoed from the darkness, sounding strangely distant. I didn't trigger the EMP. I triggered the fail-safe Thorne built into his own penthouse renovation, a system designed to collapse the ceiling supports if unauthorized external network interference was detected. A shower of white dust and pulverized concrete rained down from the ceiling directly above our heads. "That ceiling," I choked out, scrambling backward toward the doorway, pulling Lena with me. "That's the floor of our master bedroom." We stumbled out onto the landing just as the grinding noise reached a peak, a sound of catastrophic structural failure. The entire ceiling of the hallway outside 24B shuddered violently, and a massive rectangular section of the pristine marble floor from the penthouse level above us, the floor of our master suite, gave way with a deafening crash, plunging down into the abyss of 24B, taking with it marble, heavy furniture, and whatever remained of the young woman and her server farm. We stood frozen on the landing, coughing in the dust cloud, staring into the gaping, jagged hole where our $1 million bedroom floor used to be. The debris settled, leaving a gaping chasm leading into the dark, silent void below. Then, from somewhere deep within the rubble and the fresh rupture in the penthouse floor, a sound emerged, not the shriek of metal, but a low, wet, rattling cough. A very old, very frail cough, followed by a voice that was weak but undeniably present, entirely unlike the young woman's. Who turned off the air conditioning up there? It's getting terribly stuffy." I looked at Lena. Mr. Elias Vance, the 80-year-old man with the untouchable lifetime lease, wasn't in 24B. He was apparently living inside the structure of the building itself, right above where his contractor had just detonated a ceiling collapse. The dust motes danced in the harsh emergency lights that had finally kicked on, illuminating the disaster zone. Lena and I stood ankle-deep in powdered concrete and shattered drywall, staring down into the ragged maw where our master suite ceiling had just been. The old man's voice, fragile, confused, eager yet utterly unperturbed by the tons of debris that had just crashed down around him, was the only sound besides the distant wail of approaching sirens, hopefully called by the now terrified Mr. Sterling downstairs. "Elias Vance?" I croaked, leaning precariously over the edge, peering into the gloom of the ruined 24B. "Who is asking?" the voice replied, weaker now, laced with irritation. I was having a perfectly good nap. "And who allowed that dreadful noise to start up? Sounded like a freight train crashing through the utilities closet." Lena gripped my arm, her eyes wide with dawning comprehension. "Michael, the conduits she was cutting, they ran through Vance's unit to get to ours. The young woman wasn't his operator. She was attacking him by threatening us. She didn't want to expose Thorne's data. She wanted to sever Vance's access point before he could use it. And where is the young woman?" I looked back into the smoking wreck of 24B. The server racks were crumpled masses of twisted metal, the screens dark. There was no sign of the operator, no body, no escape route evident in the chaos. "She's gone," I admitted, scanning the wreckage frantically. "She must have had an escape route designed into the floor plan." "Mr. Vance," I called down, projecting my voice carefully over the debris. "We are the new owners of this complex. We are here to help. Can you tell us what is happening? Who was that person down there?" A long, wheezing silence followed. Then the old man spoke again, his tone shifting from frail confusion to something sharp and deeply calculating. "The new owners? Oh, splendid. Just in time, too. They tried to silence me, you see. The little hacker brat. Thorne sent her when he heard the transfer was going through. She thought she could cut my access before I could transmit the final package." "Package? What package?" Lena demanded, stepping closer to the hole. "The ledger," Vance wheezed. "The real ledger. Thorne didn't just hide data. He manufactured entire shell companies and laundered money through maintenance contracts for this building for 20 years. I had the proof, the original schematics, the real accounting, stored in a cold server running off the backup auxiliary power. That little anarchist tried to take me out by overloading the grid connection between 24A and 24B, She nearly succeeded. He coughed again, rattling. But she didn't account for the fail-safe. I built this building, you understand. Every pipe, every wire, every secret compartment. I didn't just get a lifetime lease. I built the master key into the very foundation. And the ceiling collapse? I asked, pointing to the gaping hole. You caused that? Indeed, Vance said with a faint pride in his voice. When she initiated her countdown, I rerouted the kinetic feedback loop designed for seismic testing directly into the structural support beneath her main cooling unit. It wasn't an EMP, son. It was controlled structural failure. Took out her setup beautifully, saved the ledger. I looked at Lena. We hadn't just bought a building from a shady developer. We had bought a war, complete with internal sabotage and hidden leverage points. Mr. Vance, I said slowly, taking control. My CEO voice kicking back in, now tempered with a respect for true, entrenched power. We are in a difficult position. You are on our property. You have evidence of massive corporate fraud against the previous owner, fraud that we are now technically liable for. And you just brought down a section of our penthouse. Precisely, Vance agreed, which is why we need to talk partnership, not eviction. Thorne wanted me gone to hide his tracks. You bought the building, which means you are now his unwitting successor, and you have a massive cleanup ahead of you. But you also have the evidence necessary to destroy Thorne and prove due diligence if you handle this correctly. And what do you want in exchange for this evidence? Lena asked, ever the pragmatist. Simple. My $400 a month arrangement stays. The building remains my territory for systems administration. And, Vance paused, his voice gaining surprising strength, I want that obnoxious coffee shop on the ground floor, the Daily Grind, to remain. It's the only place that makes a decent Americano that doesn't taste like battery acid. And I need a dedicated, high-speed, shielded data line running directly from my new location, wherever that may be after this dust settles, straight to the main fiber hub. I don't trust the primary grid anymore. I looked at Lena. We could fight him. We could call the authorities, reveal the massive illegal operation, and spend the next 5 years in court proving we weren't complicit in Thorne's crimes, all while the building was labeled a hazardous site. Or, Mr. Vance, I said, a genuine professional smile finally returning to my face. A smile of understanding, not arrogance. Welcome aboard. You're no longer a tenant. E.T., you are our chief infrastructure security consultant. Lena, contact David. Draw up the new contract immediately. A consultancy agreement, unlimited budget for shielded cabling, and a mandatory no-questions-asked $400 monthly stipend for building historical archives. Lena grinned, pulling out her phone again. Consider it done, Mr. Vance. And Michael? I think we just found our secret weapon against the entire real estate underworld. From the darkness below, the old man gave a contented, rasping sigh. Excellent. Now if someone could kindly send a handyman up here to shore up this hole, I need to relocate my equipment before Mr. Sterling realizes his reputation is about to be permanently destroyed.